The morning sun cast long shadows across the Rocky Mountains as Dr. Maya Collins checked her equipment one last time. The air was crisp and clean, filling her lungs with that distinctive mountain freshness she had come to love over her 15 years of geological expeditions. She pulled her worn leather journal from her backpack and made a quick note of the weather conditions. Perfect for their 3-day sample collection trip. Everyone ready? She called to her team of 4 graduate students who were finishing up their preparations at the base of the trail. They had driven as far as the dirt road would take them, and now faced a 6-mile hike to the first collection site. Maya had chosen this remote area specifically because it remained largely unexplored by research teams, making it perfect for her study on how climate change was affecting high-altitude rock formations. "Just about, Dr. Collins," replied Raj, her most experienced student. He was adjusting his pack straps while talking with Lynn, who was checking something on their GPS unit. Nearby, Diego and Priya were comparing notes on their field journals. Maya smiled to herself. This was a good team, smart, prepared, and genuinely passionate about geology. Not like some groups she'd led where students were just there to fulfill a credit requirement. These 4 had specifically requested to join her on this expedition, despite knowing it would be physically demanding and far from comfortable. "Remember, folks, we're looking for evidence of unusual erosion patterns," Maya reminded them as they began their ascent up the narrow trail. The satellite images showed some interesting formations about 8 miles in, but we'll set up camp before we reach that point. The first 2 hours of hiking passed pleasantly enough. The group fell into a comfortable rhythm, with Maya leading and Raj bringing up the rear to make sure no one fell behind. They stopped occasionally to note interesting rock formations or take quick samples, but mostly they pressed on, eager to reach their primary research area before nightfall. It was just after their lunch break, as they rounded a particularly steep section of trail, that the world as Maya understood it changed forever. "Dr. Collins," Diego called from behind her, his voice strangely tight. "Am I seeing things?" Maya turned, ready to explain whatever geological formation had caught his attention, but Diego wasn't looking at the ground or the cliff face. He was staring straight ahead, his mouth hanging slightly open. Maya followed his gaze, and the words died in her throat. Between 2 massive ridges of granite, in a valley that should have contained nothing but rocks and alpine vegetation, sat an enormous white cruise ship, the kind you'd expect to see docked at a Caribbean port, not nestled in the Rocky Mountains nearly 8,000 feet above sea level and hundreds of miles from the nearest ocean. "That's impossible," Lynn whispered, coming to stand beside Maya. "How did a cruise ship get up here?" It was a question without a logical answer. The massive vessel had to be at least 1,000 feet long, its white hull gleaming in the afternoon sunlight despite visible weathering. The name Aurora Star was painted in elegant blue lettering along its side. "Maybe it's not real?" Priya suggested, squinting at the distant shape. "Like a movie set or something? In the middle of protected wilderness?" Raj shook his head. No way they'd get permits for that. Maya was already reaching for her binoculars. Through the lenses, the impossibility only became more concrete. This was no illusion or cleverly disguised building. It was undeniably a massive ocean liner, somehow sitting perfectly balanced between 2 mountain ridges, as if it had been placed there by a giant child playing with toys. "The Aurora Star," Maya read aloud. Why does that name sound familiar? Diego already had his phone out, trying to catch enough signal to search online. After a moment of frustrated waiting, he shook his head. "No service. But I think I remember something about a missing cruise ship in the news a few years back." 3 years ago, Raj said quietly. "My cousin was supposed to go on that cruise for her honeymoon, but they canceled at the last minute. The ship disappeared during its maiden voyage in the Pacific. No distress signal, no debris field, just gone. Nearly 200 passengers and crew, all missing." The group fell silent, staring at the impossible sight before them. "We need to call this in," Maya finally said, pulling out her satellite phone. But even as she began dialing, curiosity was already burning through her professional caution. The call to park rangers was brief. Yes, they would send someone to investigate. No, they couldn't get a helicopter there until tomorrow at the earliest due to incoming weather. Yes, they advised the research team to keep their distance. "They don't believe us," Maya said after hanging up, the tone in the ranger's voice having made that perfectly clear. "Can't really blame them. So what do we do now?" Lynn asked, looking between the ship and their original trail. Continue with our research or... Maya bit her lip, weighing her options. The responsible choice would be to set up camp and wait for authorities. But the scientist in her couldn't ignore the greatest mystery she'd ever encountered. What forces could possibly transport a massive cruise ship to this elevation, and why was there no path of destruction? No evidence of how it had arrived. We'll set up a base camp, she decided, but a bit closer to the ship than we originally planned. An hour later, their tents were pitched about half a mile from the Aurora Star. The afternoon sun was beginning to dip, casting long shadows from the vessel that stretched toward their camp like fingers. The team had been mostly quiet during setup, each lost in their own thoughts about the impossible scene before them. Over a simple dinner of rehydrated camping food, they finally began theorizing. Maybe it's some billionaire's crazy project, Diego suggested, like those guys who build exact replicas of the Titanic. Priya shook her head. No way to transport something that size up here. There's no road infrastructure, and even in pieces it would be impossible to hide the construction. Could it be some kind of military experiment gone wrong? Lynn offered. Like they were testing some new technology and it went haywire. Raj looked skeptical. The Aurora Star was a commercial vessel. I remember the news coverage of its disappearance. There were families on board. Maya stared at the ship as the last rays of sunlight glinted off its windows. Something about those windows bothered her. She grabbed her binoculars again and focused. There's light inside, she said suddenly, causing everyone to fall silent. Very faint, but it's there. The team crowded around, taking turns with the binoculars to confirm Maya's observation. Sure enough, a dim glow could be seen in some of the ship's windows, as if emergency lighting was still functioning. That means there's still power, Raj whispered. After 3 years. Or someone's on board, Diego added, causing an uncomfortable shiver to pass through the group. Maya made a decision then that would change all their lives. Raj and I will do a preliminary investigation, she announced. Just to the entrance and back. We'll document what we see and wait for the authorities tomorrow with actual evidence. The others protested, either wanting to come along or trying to convince Maya to wait. But her mind was made up. As the twilight deepened into dusk, Maya and Raj prepared small packs with flashlights, cameras, and first aid supplies. We'll be back in 2 hours, Maya promised the others. If we're not, use the satellite phone and call for emergency help. The walk to the ship felt surreal. Each step brought the massive vessel into clearer focus, making its presence in this environment even more impossible. Up close, the Aurora Star was even more impressive, and eerie, than it had appeared from a distance. Its bow rose up like a white cliff towering over them. Look at that, Raj said, pointing to where the hull met the rocky ground. No impact damage. No scraping. It's like it was gently placed here. Maya nodded, taking photos with her camera. And no tracks or evidence of construction equipment. Nothing to suggest how it arrived. They circled a portion of the massive ship, looking for any access point. The main boarding areas were too high off the ground to reach, but eventually, they found a service door near the rear of the vessel. It hung slightly open, moving gently in the mountain breeze. The sound of metal creaking against metal sent chills down Maya's spine. She and Raj exchanged nervous glances in the beam of their flashlights. Ready? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Raj swallowed visibly but nodded. Ready? Together they stepped toward the open door, about to uncover the first clues to a mystery that would shock the entire world. The service door creaked as Maya pushed it open wider, the sound echoing through the silent mountain air. She hesitated for just a moment, flashlight beam dancing across the dark opening before taking a deep breath and stepping inside. Raj followed closely behind, his own light joining hers to illuminate what appeared to be a narrow service corridor. The air doesn't smell stale, he whispered, as if afraid to disturb the silence. That's weird, right? For something abandoned for 3 years? Maya nodded, running her beam along the walls. The corridor was surprisingly clean. No dust, no signs of animals seeking shelter. None of the decay you'd expect in an abandoned vessel. The floor beneath their feet was dry and solid. Maybe there's some kind of ventilation system still running, she suggested, though that explanation felt inadequate even as she said it. They moved cautiously down the corridor, documenting everything with photos. The passage eventually opened into what looked like a staff area, lockers lining one wall, a small break room with tables and chairs perfectly arranged as if waiting for the next shift to arrive. "Look at this," Raj called softly, standing by a wall calendar. The last date marked is May 15th, 2022. That matches the disappearance date. Maya frowned, studying the calendar. Someone had circled the date in red pen and written, "Jessica's birthday dinner, 8 p.m. in neat handwriting." Such a normal human detail made the ship's mysterious presence here feel even more unsettling. "Let's try to find our way to the main areas," she suggested. "Maybe we can figure out what happened." Following signs on the walls, they navigated through the ship's service areas and eventually found themselves at a door marked "Main Deck Access." Maya pushed it open, and they both gasped. The flashlight beams weren't necessary anymore. Soft emergency lighting illuminated a vast, luxurious lobby area that would have fit perfectly in a five-star hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from high ceilings, their facets catching the dim light. Marble floors gleamed beneath their feet, and elegant furniture was arranged in conversational groupings throughout the space. "This doesn't look like a ship in distress," Raj observed, voice hushed with awe. "Everything's perfect. Not even a cushion out of place," he was right. There were no signs of panic, no overturned furniture, no abandoned personal belongings that you'd expect if there had been an emergency. It looked more like everyone had simply left, in an orderly fashion. As if they'd all calmly walked away from a perfectly functional cruise ship. "The power's still on," Maya noted, pointing to the emergency lights. "After 3 years? That's impossible without maintenance." They crossed the lobby toward a large reception desk. Behind it, computer screens glowed with a blue standby light. Maya reached over and tapped a keyboard. To her surprise, the screen immediately came to life, displaying a login page for the ship's management system. "Try admin and password," Raj suggested with a nervous laugh. Maya shot him a look, but tried it anyway. No luck. She tried a few other common combinations, but the system remained locked. "Worth a shot," she said, straightening up. "Let's keep going." They chose a corridor leading off the main lobby marked Passenger Suites. The hallway was wide and carpeted in plush burgundy, doors spaced evenly on both sides. Each door had a number and a small digital card reader. "Should we try to get into one?" Raj asked. Maya considered this. "I don't want to damage anything. Let's see if we can find an open one first." They tried several door handles as they moved down the corridor, all locked. But at the end of the hallway, Suite 156 had a door that stood slightly ajar. Maya pushed it open slowly. "Hello, anyone here?" Her voice sounded strange in the quiet ship, though she knew the question was unnecessary. Still, some human instinct made her announce their presence. The suite was stunning, a spacious room with a king-sized bed, sitting area with a sofa and chairs, and floor-to-ceiling windows that would have offered spectacular ocean views. Now they framed the bizarre sight of Rocky Mountains under moonlight. Like the lobby, everything was immaculate. The bed was perfectly made, towels folded neatly in the bathroom, not a personal item in sight. It looked like a room waiting for guests to arrive, not one that had been occupied and abandoned. "This doesn't make sense," Maya said, opening the closet to find it empty. "Where are people's belongings? Even in an emergency evacuation, people don't take everything with them. Maybe this room wasn't occupied when—" "Whatever happened, happened," Raj suggested. "Maybe. But something felt off. Let's check another floor." They found a stairwell and climbed up one level. This floor was marked Premium Suites. The emergency lighting was functioning here too, casting everything in a soft blue glow. But as they rounded a corner, Maya stopped suddenly, grabbing Raj's arm. "Look," she whispered, pointing down the hallway. One of the suite doors was completely different from the others. Instead of the elegant wood with gold room numbers, this door was made of what looked like steel, with a keypad lock and a small sign reading "Authorized Personnel Only." "That's not standard for a cruise ship," Raj said. They approached cautiously. Unlike the passenger rooms, this door had a small window. Maya stood on tiptoes to peer through it, shining her flashlight inside. "Oh my God," she breathed. Raj quickly looked too, then pulled back, his face pale in the blue emergency light. That's not normal. What they had seen was unmistakably a laboratory, not the kind of medical facility you might expect on a passenger ship, but a full scientific research lab with equipment that looked more at home in a cutting-edge university than on a cruise liner. "We need to get in there," Maya decided, examining the keypad. It was a simple 4-digit code. She tried 1234, then 000. Nothing. Try 51522, Raj suggested. The date from the calendar. Maya punched in 5152. The light on the keypad turned green and they heard a click as the door unlocked. Good thinking, she said, impressed. She pushed the door open and they stepped inside. The laboratory was even more sophisticated than it had appeared through the window. Multiple workstations with advanced computer equipment lined the walls. In the center of the room stood several large machines Maya couldn't identify, though they looked expensive and highly specialized. Most striking were the glass cases along one wall. Each contained what appeared to be rock and plant samples, carefully labeled and sealed. Maya approached them, shining her light to read the labels. These are strange, she said, frowning. These classification systems don't match any standard geological or botanical naming conventions I've ever seen. One sample, a reddish rock with unusual crystalline formations, was labeled simply B247J. Plant specimen with blue-tinged leaves bore the code F9183N. Raj had moved to one of the computer stations and was trying to turn it on. Unlike the reception computer, this one came to life immediately. No password required. Files and folders filled the screen with names just as cryptic as the specimen labels. Dr. Collins, he called, voice tight with excitement or fear, she couldn't tell which. You need to see this. Maya joined him at the computer. Raj had opened a video file titled Log 327. On screen, a woman in a white lab coat sat before the camera, looking tired but focused. The timestamp showed a date just 6 months ago, long after the ship had disappeared. The woman began to speak. This is Dr. Helen Cho, research lead, day 327 since the event. The dimensional stabilizer continues to function within acceptable parameters, though power reserves are down to 42%. If we can't find a new energy source soon, we'll lose our ability to maintain this pocket of stability. She paused, running a hand through her hair. The good news is that the latest samples from World B2 show promising compatibility with our own biological systems. If we can't find a way home, it may be possible to relocate there permanently. Captain Brooks is organizing another expedition team to gather more data. The video ended abruptly. Maya and Raj stared at each other in the dim blue light of the laboratory. Dimensional stabilizer? World B2? Raj whispered. What is she talking about? Maya's mind was racing, trying to make sense of what they just heard. It sounds like they went somewhere else. Not just physically moved, but traveled to another dimension? And this ship is somehow maintaining a pocket of stability around itself? It seemed impossible, something out of science fiction. Yet here they were, standing in a cruise ship that had no business being in the Rocky Mountains, with evidence of advanced scientific research far beyond what should have been on a passenger vessel. We need to find more of these logs, Maya decided, and we should tell the others what we've found. As if on cue, the satellite phone in her pocket rang, making them both jump. It was Diego, his voice tight with concern. Dr. Collins, you need to get back here now, he said without preamble. There are lights coming down the mountain. A lot of them. And they're moving fast. Maya looked at Raj, whose eyes had widened at overhearing Diego's words. We're on our way, she said into the phone. Pack up only the essentials. We may need to move quickly. She pocketed the phone and turned to Raj. We need to document as much as we can before we go. Take photos of everything in this lab, especially the sample labels. Maya and Raj rushed back through the ship's eerily silent corridors, their footsteps echoing against the marble floors. The mysterious discovery of the laboratory and that strange video log had turned their scientific curiosity into something more urgent, possibly even dangerous. You think whoever's coming down the mountain is connected to the ship? Raj asked between breaths as they hurried. I don't know, Maya replied. But I don't think we should wait around to find out. They reached the service door where they had entered and paused briefly, peering out into the night. The mountains were dark except for the distant pinpoints of light Diego had mentioned, at least a dozen of them, moving in an organized pattern down the slope toward their camp. Flashlights, Maya whispered. Too steady for hikers, too organized for tourists. They slipped out and began quickly making their way back to camp, staying low and using the ship's massive hull for cover as long as possible. The full moon cast enough light for them to navigate without their flashlights, which might have given away their position. When they were about halfway back, Maya pulled Raj behind a large boulder and pointed to the ridge above their camp. 3 figures with powerful flashlights were moving along the edge, sweeping the beams across the terrain below. "Those aren't park rangers," Raj whispered. "Too late at night and rangers would announce themselves." Maya nodded grimly. "Let's circle around. We need to warn the others without being seen." They took a longer route back to camp, staying in the shadows of rocks and scrubby pine trees. As they drew closer, they could hear voices, unfamiliar ones, deep and authoritative. "Search the tents. Find their equipment. I want all cameras, phones, computers." Maya and Raj crouched behind a fallen tree, watching as men in dark uniforms methodically went through their campsite. Their 3 teammates sat huddled together, looking scared as another uniformed figure stood guard over them. "Government?" Raj mouthed silently. Maya shook her head slightly. These people wore no obvious insignia or identification. Their uniforms were plain black, with only subtle shoulder patches she couldn't make out from this distance. Definitely not standard Park Service or military. She pointed to a spot further along the tree line, and they crawled carefully in that direction, hoping to get closer to Diego, Lynn, and Priya without being spotted. "They just showed up about 20 minutes after we called you," Diego was saying to one of the uniformed men. "They didn't explain anything, just ordered us to stay together and not touch our equipment." "And you've only been here 1 day?" The man was making notes on a small tablet. "What exactly brought you to this specific location?" Before Diego could answer, one of the searchers emerged from Maya's tent holding up her field journal. "Sir, you're going to want to see this. Detailed notes about the ship with drawings." The man with the tablet looked up sharply. "The ship? So you've seen it?" Diego hesitated, clearly unsure what to say. The man stepped closer to him, lowering his voice. "Let me be clear. This is now a matter of national security. Anything you've seen, anything you know belongs to us now. Understood?" From their hiding place, Maya felt her heart racing. She caught Raj's eye and made a small motion with her head. They needed to get away now while the attention was on their teammates. Carefully, they began to back away from the camp. They would circle around to the other side of the mountain and try to reach the ranger station on foot. It would be a long, difficult night hike, but they had the flash drive with its copied files and the photos on their phones. Evidence of what they'd found, but they'd only made it about 50 yards when a bright light suddenly blinded them. "Don't move," a voice commanded. "Hands where I can see them." They froze, raising their hands slowly. The light lowered slightly, revealing a tall woman in the same dark uniform as the others. She held not a flashlight but some kind of scanning device that glowed blue along one edge. "2 more," she called over her shoulder, then turned back to them. "Dr. Maya Collins and Raj Patel, I presume? We've been expecting you. Please come with me." Maya's mind raced. How did they know their names? Had their teammates revealed that information? "Who are you people?" she demanded. "What's going on here?" The woman regarded them coolly. "I'm Dr. Natasha Klein, Special Projects Division. And what's going on is that you've stumbled into something far beyond your comprehension. Now I believe you have some information that belongs to us." She held out her hand expectantly. Maya hesitated, then reluctantly handed over her phone. Raj did the same, but neither mentioned the flash drive, which Maya had tucked into her sock when they first spotted the lights. "The flash drive too, Dr. Collins," Klein said with a thin smile. "The one in your sock. Our scanners detect all electronic devices." Defeated, Maya retrieved the small drive and handed it over. Klein pocketed it and gestured for them to walk ahead of her back to camp. When they arrived, their 3 teammates looked relieved to see them, though the atmosphere remained tense. The uniformed personnel had packed up all their equipment and were loading it into large black cases. "Now," Klein said, addressing all 5 researchers, "here's what happens next. You'll be transported to a secure facility where you'll be debriefed. After that, you'll sign some paperwork and be escorted back to your university." "And if we refuse?" Maya asked. Klein's smile didn't reach her eyes. "That would be an unfortunate decision with significant legal consequences. But I don't think it will come to that. Most people in your position are quite eager to cooperate once they understand what they've encountered." As if on cue, a deep rumbling sound filled the air. Maya looked up to see 2 black helicopters appearing over the ridge, their spotlights illuminating the area around the camp. "Your transportation has arrived," Klein said. "Please gather any personal items you wish to take. Everything else will be returned to you after processing." As the helicopters landed in a clear area about 100 yards from camp, Maya and her team were escorted toward them. The wind whipped around them, stirring up dust and pine needles from the forest floor. "Dr. Collins," Klein said, falling into step beside her, "I'm particularly interested in what you saw inside the Aurora Star. Our monitors indicated you accessed the laboratory on Deck 7. Maya shot her a surprised look. "You've been monitoring the ship?" "Of course. Ever since it appeared 3 years ago." "Appeared?" Maya repeated. "You mean you don't know how it got here either?" Something flickered across Klein's face. Uncertainty, perhaps. "That's one of the questions we've been trying to answer." They reached the helicopters and were directed to board. Inside, the noise made conversation impossible, which suited Maya fine. She needed time to think. She caught Raj's eye across the cabin, and he gave her a subtle nod. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The helicopters lifted off, banking sharply to the east. Through the window, Maya could see the impossible cruise ship growing smaller below them, its white hull gleaming in the moonlight. From this height, it looked even more out of place. A massive ocean vessel nestled among the peaks like a toy left behind by a careless giant. 30 minutes later, they descended toward what appeared to be a military installation, though it bore no obvious markings or flags. The compound was surrounded by high fences topped with razor wire, with guard towers at regular intervals. Floodlights illuminated a central complex of low buildings. As they landed on a helipad, Maya noticed something odd about the facility. It seemed to shimmer slightly around the edges, as if the air itself was distorted. The effect was subtle, easy to miss if you weren't looking for it. But after what they'd found in the ship's laboratory, Maya was definitely looking for it. They were ushered from the helicopter into the main building, through a series of security checkpoints that included retinal scans and some kind of field that made Maya's skin tingle as they passed through it. "What was that?" she asked one of their escorts. "Containment field," he replied without elaboration. Finally, they were led into a conference room with a long table and comfortable chairs. The walls were a sterile white with no windows or decorations. The only notable feature was a large screen on one wall. "Please sit," Klein said, gesturing to the chairs. "Can I offer anyone water, coffee? It's been a long night." The casual tone seemed absurd given the circumstances, but Maya found herself nodding. Her throat was parched from the dry helicopter air. As an assistant brought in drinks, Klein tapped a control panel on the table. The lights dimmed slightly and the screen on the wall came to life, showing an image of the Aurora Star. "What you've discovered," Klein began, "is not simply a cruise ship in an impossible location. It's something far more significant, potentially the most important scientific find of the century." She tapped the panel again, and the image changed to show a series of graphs and readings. 3 years ago, our sensors detected an enormous energy spike in the Pacific Ocean, followed by the disappearance of the Aurora Star. 2 weeks later, a similar energy signature appeared in the Rocky Mountains, and so did the ship. We've been studying it ever since. It's exactly where... The conference room fell silent as Dr. Klein's words sank in. Parallel dimensions. The stuff of science fiction, yet here they were, being briefed on it as fact by someone who clearly represented some secret government agency. "I don't understand." Lynn finally spoke up, her voice small in the quiet room. "You're saying the Aurora Star was never actually a real cruise ship? It was all a cover?" Klein leaned back in her chair. "Oh, it was a real cruise ship. Had to be, to maintain the cover story. Real passengers, real crew. Most of them had no idea what was happening beneath the recreation decks." "Most of them?" Diego asked. "So some knew. About 50 people on board were part of the research team," Klein explained. "Scientists, engineers, security personnel. They were embedded among the regular crew and passengers." Maya's mind was racing. What about the rest? The innocent people who just booked a vacation? What happened to them when the ship traveled? A shadow crossed Klein's face. "That's where things get complicated. We believe they made it back safely, but not to our world." "What does that mean?" Raj demanded. Klein tapped the control panel again. The screen changed to show what looked like brain scans, dozens of them, arranged in a grid. "These are neural pattern matches we've identified over the past 3 years. People who were on the passenger manifest of the Aurora Star who have been found living normal lives in various parts of the world." She paused. "Except they're not the same people who boarded the ship. At least not exactly." Priya leaned forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. You're saying they're versions from another dimension? Duplicates? We believe so. Klein nodded. They have the same names, similar memories, but subtle differences. Most importantly, none of them remember being on the cruise. Their timeline diverges just before they would have boarded. Maya tried to process this information. So the original passengers are likely living in what Dr. Cho's logs referred to as World B2, Klein finished. A parallel Earth nearly identical to our own. And the research team? The 50 who knew what was happening? Maya pressed. Klein's expression remained carefully neutral. Most of them are still on board the ship. They've been continuing their research, trying to find a way back to their original dimension. The logs you found were part of their documentation. But you said you've been monitoring the ship for 3 years. Raj pointed out. Why haven't you contacted them? Rescued them? It's not that simple, Klein sighed. The dimensional barrier around the ship is highly unstable. We can monitor remotely, but physical interaction is problematic. The few attempts we've made to send teams inside have had mixed results. Something in her tone made Maya's skin crawl. What kind of mixed results? Instead of answering, Klein stood up. I think it's time you saw the full picture. Follow me, please. They were led through more security checkpoints to an elevator that required both a keycard and retinal scan to operate. It descended for what felt like a very long time. When the doors finally opened, they found themselves in a vast underground facility. The central area was dominated by enormous screens displaying real-time data and images of the Aurora star from various angles. Dozens of people in lab coats and uniforms worked at computer stations. But what drew their attention was a large circular chamber off to one side, enclosed in what appeared to be thick glass. Inside, strange equipment surrounded a platform where a familiar object sat under bright lights, a small rock with unusual reddish crystalline formations. That's one of the samples we saw in the ship's lab, Meyer exclaimed. B-247J, Klein nodded. One of the few artifacts we've been able to retrieve from the ship. It's not just a rock, Dr. Collins. Its molecular structure doesn't match anything found on Earth, at least not our Earth. She led them closer to the chamber. Inside, scientists in hazmat suits were carefully taking measurements of the rock. The material emits a low-level radiation we've never encountered before, Klein explained. Harmless in small doses, but it seems to be what allows objects or people to pass between dimensions under certain conditions. Diego frowned. What conditions? That's what we're trying to figure out. The Aurora star researchers were apparently on the verge of controlling the process when the accident happened. What accident? Maya asked. Klein hesitated, then gestured them toward another area where a video was playing on a large screen. It showed the Aurora star at sea, sailing under clear blue skies. The timestamp indicated it was from 3 years ago. This was filmed by a passenger on a nearby vessel just before the incident, Klein explained. In the video, everything seemed normal until a strange light began to glow around the ship. It intensified rapidly, becoming almost too bright to look at. Then in a flash, the ship simply vanished, leaving only empty ocean where it had been. Their dimensional drive activated unexpectedly, Klein said quietly. We believe it was triggered by a unique combination of factors. A powerful lightning storm, the specific location over a deep ocean trench with unusual magnetic properties, and possibly human error. And it brought them to the mountains? Lynn asked, confused. Not exactly. Based on Dr. Cho's logs and our own research, we believe the ship first traveled to World B2, remained there for what may have been months or even years in their time, and then attempted a return journey. But they missed, either in space or across dimensions, and ended up in the Rockies instead of the Pacific Ocean. Maya tried to wrap her head around the implications. So the people on board now have been stranded for much longer than 3 years from their perspective, Klein confirmed. Time moves differently between dimensions, and they've been unable to leave the ship because the dimensional field around it is the only thing keeping them anchored to our reality. That's what Dr. Cho meant by pocket of stability, Raj realized. Klein nodded, impressed. Exactly. If they step outside that field, they would likely be pulled back to their original dimension, or worse, lost between worlds entirely. A technician approached, handing Klein a tablet. She reviewed the information on it and frowned slightly. It seems our unexpected visitors tonight have caused some disturbance in the field around the ship, she said, looking up at Maya and her team. Your presence, your interaction with the ship's systems may have triggered something. As if on cue, an alarm began to sound throughout the facility. Red lights flashed and personnel moved with sudden urgency. What's happening? Maya asked, her heart racing. Klein was already striding toward the main display area, where the screens showed the Aurora star now glowing with the same strange light they'd seen in the video. The ship's dimensional drive is activating, she said, her professional calm cracking slightly. This isn't supposed to happen. The images on the screen showed the air around the cruise ship rippling like heat waves over hot asphalt, but more intense. The light emanating from the vessel pulsed rhythmically, growing stronger with each pulse. Containment teams, deploy now, Klein barked into a communication device. We need to stabilize that field before. She was cut off by a blinding flash from the screens. When the image cleared, the ship was still there, but something had changed. The mountains around it seemed different, subtly altered in shape and vegetation. What just happened? Maya whispered. Klein stared at the screen, her face pale. It didn't move. The ship stayed exactly where it was, but what? Raj pressed. The reality around it shifted, Klein said softly. The dimensional field expanded. That's not just the ship anymore. That's a piece of World B2 bleeding into our world. As they watched, the strange rippling effect continued to spread outward from the ship. Slowly but steadily, trees and rocks within its reach seemed to flicker, sometimes appearing slightly different in form or color. Is it dangerous? Priya asked. We don't know, Klein admitted. This has never happened before. But we need to contain it before it spreads further. She turned to Maya and her team, her expression deadly serious. I need your help. You've been inside recently, interacted with their systems. You may have triggered this, but you might also be the key to stopping it. Maya exchanged glances with her teammates. Hours ago, they had been simple geology researchers on a routine expedition. Now they were caught in the middle of what might be the most significant scientific event in human history. What do you need us to do? She asked. Klein's answer was interrupted by another alarm, this one more urgent than the first. One of the technicians called out from a monitoring station. Dr. Klein, we're picking up life signs approaching the perimeter of the expanded field. Multiple individuals moving from the ship toward the boundary. On the screen, small figures could be seen emerging from the Aurora star, making their way down the gangways that had appeared when reality shifted. They moved with purpose, heading toward the edge of the shimmering field that now extended nearly half a mile from the ship in all directions. They're trying to leave the ship, Klein realized. After 3 years, they think they can finally go home. Isn't that a good thing? Diego asked. Klein's expression was grim. We don't know who or what those people have become after years in another dimension, or what they might bring with them.